access the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Hey, Green Lantern fans. Welcome to the podcast of OA, episode number 224. This is a kind of a special episode, but as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Phil Bova. Phil, my friend, how you doing?
I'm good. One more day left to work and off till August.
Lucky dog, lucky dog.
Man. So looking forward to it. Spend some time with Clark, and we're going to do a lot of good stuff.
So this is an episode that you and I were going to record earlier in the month, but then DC contacted us and said, hey, how would you like to interview JLMay Adams and Philip Kennedy Johnson? And we're like, oh, well, yeah, why not? So this got put on pause until now. But every so often, I think it's every year, that a group of podcasts get together and they do an event called JLMay. And they focus on different things. And I think the last time that you and I participated in JLMay was 2019 when they were doing the 10th anniversary of Blackest Night.
Mm-hmm. That was a good time too.
Yeah, it was a blast. So this time around, they are focusing on the Brave and the Bold run from, I think it was like 2007, 2008 through 2010 and that time frame. And different shows are covering different issues of the Brave and the Bold. And what we're going to talk about is issues 21 and 22, which is the third and fourth part of the story that's a team up with Hal and Phantom Stranger and Green Arrow. Our half is Green Arrow, but it's not really, but we'll get to that. So the first two issues, issues 19 and 20, were covered by our good friends Chad and Mark over the Lanterncast. So it may be of value to folks to listen to their episode because they're covering the first half of the story. But you and I we have the honor and pleasure of doing the second half of the story.
Which, by the way, is cooler because Phantom Stranger is awesome.
Yeah, I love Phantom Stranger. He's one of those great, I get into the macabre and the mystical and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that. And Phantom Stranger really fits the bill. And it's an unusual team up for Hal to have. But it's kind of a neat story. We'll get to it. Even though both issues say it's Green Lantern and Green Arrow, it really isn't. But we'll get to that. We do have some Green Lantern news and things to talk about, just a little bit. A big shout out. We have a listener who, by the name of David Kocher, who, and hopefully I pronounced your last name right, David. If I didn't, correct me, please. But he recently sent me about a month or so back. He sent me a copy of Green Lantern Rebirth #1 signed by Jeff Johns, which was fantastic. Well, recently, just within the last week or so, he sent you and I both a copy of the new Green Lantern #1 signed by JLMay Adams, which fantastic.
I mean, just a nice guy. I mean, I couldn't when he contacted us on Twitter, when he got that DM, I was like, hold on. I was like, I'm humbled here. I was like, but why? I mean, you don't have to. I mean,
right.
It's unheard of for somebody to go. First of all, it's just me. I'm just grateful to be here, just to do this and have a good time. And whatever person I reach out there with my voice, cool, so be it. If they like it, that's great. I mean, we talked about that. Why we do this, and we do this because it's fun, and we do this because we love what we do. And if it happens to impact some fans, that's the better. And subsequently, it has, since I've gotten on here too. And you've been on here a lot longer since you created this whole being. And and then when he reached out, I was like, man, that's really, 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 really kind. It makes you really, I don't know. It's flattering because that fans are out there and people care and the passion cares.
Right. It's humbling. I mean, he took the time out of his day to get the book signed. He bought the books, paid to ship them to us. It's fantastic. I gratefully appreciate it because I live in a small town in upstate New York. I can very rarely get to a convention to see some of these people. So,
and not only that, him running into JLMay Adams, and then JLMay Adams taking the time to write him to us, and he was just on the podcast. It's kind of worked out really, really kind of in a neat little way. And David, thank you, man. We love you, and we love hearing from you.
Yeah, greatly appreciate it. And again, it's a humbling thing, and it's an honor thing, and it's certainly not why we do the show. We don't anticipate those kind of things,
Not at
but
all.
something else that got announced recently was McFarlane, their toy company line. They are in their action figure line. They've got two Green Lantern related characters coming out. They've got a Sinestro Corps Batman. What if you going to do to pump out another Batman figure, right? Uh,
Oh,
but then the other one is that's kind of cool. And again, it's one of those. Okay, it's a Green Lantern figure, but it's the Dread Lantern from Dark Knight's Metal. I think he appeared in one issue of one book. It's a cool variation of Alan Scott. I'll take Green Lantern figures however I can get them. But gosh, there's so many good characters. I'd love to see. I have the Atrocitus and the Necron and a couple other ones. I would love to see them do like a Kilowog or some of these other characters that
I mean, could you
really
imagine a
deserve it.
Larfleeze? I mean, a Larfleeze.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're going to do obscure characters, I mean, there's not a more obscure character that doesn't fit the bill than Larfleeze. I mean, Dread
yeah.
Lantern's cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm a
Oh
little
yeah,
yawn with Batman because I mean, I mean, to be quite honest with you, the Dread Lantern's a connection of Batman because that whole metal universe was story arced around Batman.
yeah.
So there you go. There's your tie. But
I hope that this means we're going to get a real Alan Scott figure. Is what I hope.
I mean, and that would be cool. I mean, a real actual Alan Scott, one from the Earth. Actually, I'd take a Golden Age one.
Yeah,
That would rock. A good looking modern sculptured Golden Age Alan Scott.
I could dig that totally. That would be cool.
Awesome.
Speaking of Alan Scott, you and I are friends with the Martin Odell family. In fact, we had Martin Odell's son on not too long ago. And we were reached out and contacted by a family member who runs the Martin Odell family website, martin-nodell.com. And they are getting ready to open up an online store as part of their site, which I think is really fantastic. I know you've met the family at a convention. They're selling some prints of Marty's work and so on. They're going to open up an online store so that fans can buy some of these things because the family's not traveling to the big shows. They're doing some local regional stuff. It gives fans an opportunity to get some of that stuff, some of Marty's artwork that really it's almost I want to say it's nearly impossible to get some of this stuff now. So it's fantastic to see that.
Well, and the family owns all the stuff, so and there's nothing out there in circulation,
Right. Right.
But I did tell him, I said, I got to quit hanging around you and your family. He's like, why is that? I go, because you guys are going to break me, man. I was like, I'll spend all my money on buying all your great granddad stuff. I want it all. It's cool.
I'll there's a link to the Martin Odell family website on the blog of O, but I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and I'll have it up here on the screen when I do the editing for this to put that out there. But the plan was that they asked me, hey, when you announce it, we'll make the store live. So I've got to work that out with them and the logistics. But by the time you watch this or listen to it, you should be able to go to the site and get to the store, which is exciting.
It is, and they put a lot of work into their website, and I've helped them with some little stuff here and there, and and I just let them create it how they wanted to create it. I gave them some pointers. I know you gave them some pointers too, and and they've really done a good job to honor the legacy and the family. And my hat's off to them because it's rightfully owed, and I love the family. They're just a great group of people. And just friendly, and they're not out looking for anything. If they're out for looking for anything, it's just to get the recognition that Martin Nordell deserves.
To me, it's they're trying to get respect,
right? I mean, and they should. I mean, they should receive that. I mean, we're in the day and age where that kind of stuff, it shouldn't be trivial. It should be taken seriously.
Right. I agree, and Martin Odell's not given the credit that he justly deserves. Last thing to talk about, some other comic book news. Guy Gardner and Kal Rayner appeared on the pages of the Unstoppable Doom Patrol #3 that just came out. I read the issue. It's really kind of it's a car chase, and the Doom Patrol are trying to get away, and they've got a version of Starro in the backseat. And this takes place prior to the new series, so there are still Earth Lanterns in our sector, and we're not quarantined yet. But Guy and Kyle are trying to chase down Robot Man and what's the other guy's name? Gosh darn it. I don't remember the other person that's in the car. But
the guy with the mask stuff on his face.
Yeah, the bandages.
The Invisible Man guy. I can't remember his name either.
I can't remember the name either. Age is awful. It's all
I don't read
downhill.
Doom Patrol anyway, so.
But it's basically them chasing those guys down. There's some comical moments, but it's not like it's really a big Green Lantern story. Basically, they're chasing these guys down and they're trying to escape. Hijinks ensue for a part of the issue, and eventually they get away. But it was kind of interesting. I had a hard time with the artwork. The artwork for me was just, I had a real hard time. It was not. Yeah. I know art is subjective, but this to me just didn't look good. I think the Doom Patrol guys looked fine, but Guy Gardner in particular, that was rough.
Yeah, that was a little rough on me too.
Yeah.
You know, I'll say this about I don't read Doom Patrol, and I don't want to. I will never talk ill will of it because I know I watched some of the series and it was really really good. But I'll say this about the comic book. It's like, you know, it's almost like these. I don't know. I mean, this particular book with just putting those two in there, it's almost like, well, we need some guys just to stick in here to make the story move along. Who are we going to use? Does anybody know? And then it's like, oh, well, let's just use 2 Green Lantern dudes. And, oh, which ones? We'll pick out 2 Earth ones. Well, we can't use Hal because, you know, those rights go to somebody else. And we can't use John Stewart, obviously. So, oh, well, nobody's using Kyle. Nobody's using Guy. Let's throw them in there.
Just throw them in,
and
right.
And thus the story about the Green Lantern's appearance in Doom Patrol, which I bet you that's how it went down. And that's pretty sad because those are two, they shouldn't be resorted to that kind of level of characterization.
Right, because it was kind of they were jobbing for the Doom Patrol, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, okay. But I mean, that's my take. I'm not serious about it. I don't care either way. Either way, I'm just trying to defend the Kyle fans and the Guy fans out there and myself because I like Kyle, you know.
Yeah. The other character is Negative Man.
Negative Man, that's who it is. That was Matt Balmer that played him in the series.
Yeah, I'm positive of that.
That was good. That was a good one. I
can't help it. I knew you'd get a charge. I knew you'd get a charge out of it.
We need that tone.
All right. Well, before we start talking about the Brave and the Bold, I know that we're going to try to do a Know Your Core segment in this video format we're doing now. So we'll see how it goes.
I forgot we're doing the video format now.
So, right.
Gotta get myself ready. Huh?
Basically, my plan is to cover my face up with graphics. Oh God. So it's just you and the graphics. Yeah. It's all you, buddy.
So if I use wacky hand gestures, I guess that works, right? All right, that's cool. I can do this. I got this.
You got it. I have 100% faith in you, my friend.
I'm ready.
All right, we'll take a quick pause. I'll put a video bumper in here, and then when we come back, we'll do a Know Your Core segment.
What up, dweebs? This is Guy Gardner. You're listening to the podcast of OA.
Welcome back, fellow Lanterns, to another Know Your Core segment. This week, we have one of my favorites, Mogo, the sentient planet and member of the Green Lantern Corps. Mogo hails from Sector 2261. His first appearance was Green Lantern Volume 2, number 188, May of 1985, created by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbon. When desired, Mogo's affiliation with the Green Lantern Corps is marked by its foliage arranged into a green band circling the planet with the standard Corps lantern symbol. Mogo is also responsible for guiding Green Lantern rings to the new sentient beings after their hosts die. There you have it, fellow Lanterns, another Know Your Core segment, Mogo, the Mighty.
Listen up, Lanterns. It's time you took the oath with Green Lantern John Stewart. In brightest day, in blackest night, don't let the podcast of OA escape your sight. Let those who worship evil's might, beware my power. Green Lantern's Light.
All right, welcome back. So we've got a couple of books to talk about. The Brave and the Bold, issues 21 and 22. This is from the run in the early, like 2007, 2008 timeframe. I think these issues came out in 2009. So this is time-wise just to set the tone. This was kind of, it was just as we're getting to Blackest Night. Green Lantern popularity was at an all-time high. So this Brave and the Bold series had a lot of appearances of Hal in it. This particular one is written by David Hine. I believe this is his only work on Green Lantern as far as I could find. And the art is by Doug Braithwaite.
Which is phenomenal art.
Yeah. It's that painted style.
Yeah.
But and sometimes it looks really good, sometimes not so much. But I thought this looked really good and it really fit the story well. Mm-hmm. Our good friends over at the Lanterncast did the first 2 issues. And so we've got a couple of things at play. Just to summarize a little bit about what happened in the first 2 parts of the story is the Phantom Stranger shows up and tells Hal that he needs his help, and they go off. They end up on another planet with another Green Lantern and by the name of Orlin, and they discover this entity that is killing people. Just to summarize it, to really break it down, you really should listen to the Lanterncast episode to get the thorough breakdown, because they do a really good job of covering the story. But at the end of the second half of the story, we discover that Orlin, the Green Lantern of that sector, is possessed by this character called the Purge. And meanwhile, there's a story going on Earth where there are these young children who are being taken care of in a medical facility. They were the subjects of a test, some medical tests, genetic testing and so on, and things did not go well, and the kids are all put in a facility. It was overseen by a political politician, not a political politician, a corrupt politician. So obviously not too far from reality there.
Yeah,
and
right. It just kind of fits the narrative.
right. And he's taking care of these children, and they're all deformed and so on. But there's this one little girl named Cora who can't really talk, but she's drawing these symbols, and that's what's drawn the Phantom Stranger and Hal, because she actually has drawn the Green Lantern Oath. And so the Phantom Stranger's like, we've got to go research this, and they go off. They talk to the Guardians. The Guardians let Hal take the Phantom Stranger with them, and they go off. And to set the stage for where we pick up, Hal has just discovered that Orlin is possessed, and we're in sector 3897, which doesn't sound right. I must have typed that wrong in my notes. But they thought he had gone bad, but really we find out he's been possessed by the Purge. That sets us up for issue 21. So on this planet, there are these plants called the Bellamorts, and they're kind of like the Black Mercy plants, but they put you in a dream state. They don't necessarily show your what you want or what your perfect world is, but they put you in this dream state. And the Bellamorts are there, and Phantom Stranger has been overcome by the Bellamorts plant. He's in a dream state, and Hal is there, and with the Phantom Stranger trapped in the dream world, he encounters a magical visage of Cora. And Cora helps the Phantom Stranger break free. And the Phantom Stranger saves Hal, who is about to be purged by the Purge, because the Purge is really driven by trying to find someone who is free of sin. And he's basically passing judgment. And we don't know why yet. This all unravels as we go on. But the Phantom Stranger frees Hal. He exorcises the Purge from Orlin, and Orlin discovers that while he was being controlled by the Purge, he killed his own wife. In fact, Orlin describes the experience similar to how Hal and Kyle have described being possessed by Parallax, and that they're not in the driver's seat, but they're in the passenger seat of their own body. So they see everything that's being done, but they have no control. They're forced to just observe what the Purge is doing while he's in their body. So Orlin, because he's shared mental headspace with the Purge, he has the backstory. So there's a lot of exposition that goes on. And what we discover is that the Purge was the he was a disciple of a character they call the Sage. And the Purge basically takes the teachings of the Sage a little far. And we find out that their race was on a course of self-destruction. And the Sage is really a person named Amargata. And I may have totally slaughtered the pronunciation of the name.
More than likely.
But this religious leader has basically, she teaches the people to turn away from this path of self-destruction and seek self-enlightenment. And as time goes on, they enter trance-like states, enter another, altered realities in their minds, and they basically evolve kind of beyond the need of a physical form. Well, the Sage takes it one further. He's really taken this seriously, and not the Sage, the Purge. And the Purge, his name is Toba Kadori. And again, may have completely slaughtered the heck out of that name. But basically, this person is trying to find something free of sin. And we learned that the Purge basically destroyed his own planet because none of them were free from sin. And so they essentially killed themselves. So we discovered that also that Orlin, while he was possessed by the Purge, have poisoned the Bellamort because the Purge sees the Bellamort as something sinful. It's a sinful activity. And so his solution to take care of the problem is to poison them and put enough toxins in the Bellamort that anybody who uses them will die.
Smart plan.
Yeah, smart plan. Back on Earth, the corrupt politician behind it all, Mr. Harmon, orders that Cora and all the other pieces of this experiment get destroyed. He wants them torched and basically removed from existence. So he has some henchmen that are on their way to this complex in Arcadia, Virginia, and the Phantom Stranger, senses that, but he and Hal are too far away. So the Phantom Stranger contacts Green Arrow to go take care of the thugs and save the kids. And that's where Green Arrow comes in the story. I don't think Hal and Ollie spend more than maybe 2 or 3 panels in these 2 issues together. It's really not a Green Arrow, Green Lantern team up like it kind of advertises.
Right. I agree.
So while Orlin and Hal destroy the Bellamort, Ollie's taking care of the henchmen. And the Phantom Stranger shares with Orlin that the Purge, when he exercised the Purge for Orlin, that the Purge had to go find another host because he doesn't have a physical form. And the issue 21 ends with them kind of, as he's saying this, you see Hal standing there staring off into the sky. It's implied heavily that Hal is the new host for the Purge. So that's issue 21.
A fantastic issue, I might add. But I do want to say, and I got to say this again and again, the art, man, just good. I mean, the way the shading is done and the way he looks, the way he makes the Phantom Stranger look, phenomenal.
Yeah, I really liked it. And the way that he depicts the kids, you empathize with their situation because these are victims.
Right. And
the government has basically paid the parents off and have guaranteed to provide a lifetime of care. And now that they are no longer a part of the plan and they are a risk of being exposed and basically exposing this politician for what he is, they're now a liability. So that takes us into the finale of this 4-part story. And in this, it starts out, Ollie is injured. He's inside the complex, which has been set on fire. Like I said, they're trying to torch the place. And Cora appears as a mental projection and helps him as Hal and the Stranger arrive back on Earth. And they arrive in Arcadia, and Ollie gets revived. He continues to fight the baddies. The Phantom Stranger focuses on the fire, and Hal is trying to rescue the kids and trying to find them. But you can see, like, there's one panel where the artist does a really good job. You can see that even though the Phantom Stranger is focusing on the fire, he's got one eye on Hal at the same time because he knows he's possessed.
And that's a cool shot, cool panel too.
Yeah, it was really a really neat image. And it's at this point where we learn that the whole plan, when Hal finds Cora, is Hal is taken into Cora's mind by the Purge, because the Purge decides to go inside of her mind as well. And this whole thing was a plan. It was all set up by Phantom Stranger. He knew all of this stuff, and it's a trap. And that inside of Cora's mind is the Sage, and she's waiting for the Purge to show up. She's been aware of what he's been doing, and so she's there to be a trap to try to help pull the Purge into Cora's body, which is dying. Cora's body's rapidly fading. And the idea is for the Phantom Stranger and the Sage to trap the Purge inside of Cora so that when she passes away, the problem goes away and the Purge can no longer wreak havoc on the cosmos. And the reason why the Phantom Stranger does it is eventually the Purge probably would have come to Earth to find Cora, but he would have left a path of destruction along the way. So even though the Stranger is deceiving Hal, he's really trying to serve a higher purpose. He was using Hal and manipulating Hal to be the vessel of the Purge so the Purge could get to Earth without wiping out countless planets along the way.
And in Phantom Stranger's defense, I mean, he does deal with the bigger issues. He doesn't have time to deal with the trivial stuff that Hal and all those other superheroes deal with on Earth. You know, he's an ethereal figure that has to deal with major problems.
Yeah. and the Purge finds Cora really, I don't want to say attractive isn't the right word. She's pure because she's never really experienced the real world.
Right.
She's a pure soul. So he's immediately drawn to her because this is what he's been seeking. And Phantom Stranger and the Sage know this. And so the whole thing was a trap because they know that if they told Hal, then when the Purge got inside Hal's mind, he would know all of this information because they share a connection. So even though Hal's kind of mad at the Stranger, you really kind of understand why. And we learn that Cora, even though she can't speak and she can't communicate, she's conscious and she's very aware. And she talks about how Dr. Trevis, the doctor who has been taking care of them, really feels guilty about these experiments and has come to visit with her every night. And he's really racked by guilt over what happened. And her one big wish is that she wished she could say she's sorry to him. Well, when this whole thing gets done, this Phantom Stranger and Hal leave, Cora dies. Then she comes back suddenly, and we come to find out that both the Sage and the Purge basically gave their life essence to Cora to let her live again. And they went off and went into another plane of existence somewhere. So it ends with Trevis being rescued because Ollie does defeat the thugs, rescues the doctors that are at this facility. And when Mr. Hartman calls to talk to his lead thug, Dr. Trevis answers the phone and says, I am going to expose you. You know, your career is over. You're going to be held responsible for everything that happened. So you get that. And then you get Cora basically reunited with Dr. Trevis, only now Cora can talk. And so basically you can see, she sees him as a father figure. He's going to raise her as his own daughter. And that's kind of the end of the story. And it talks about, there's an underline, there's a line at the end of the story that talks about, all life is valuable, regardless of what it may seem like. When I thought that was a nice thing. He said that the life may not be measured or counted or judged one against another, for its value is absolute and every life is sacred.
Stranger, man, he has some good lines.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's a sci-fi story, but it's also a very mystical, magical story too.
And it's typical of like the Brave and the Bold kind of books that they print,
I always thought, back when I was a kid, Brave and the Bold was usually a Batman team-up book.
Mm-hmm.
What I really liked about this run is that they paired a lot of characters that you didn't see together very often,
right.
Or team-ups that were a bit more unusual. I mean, the series started out with a Batman Green Lantern team-up, but you saw things like this, and I think if I were reading this book monthly, I might have been a little frustrated because you don't find out what's going on until the third chapter. But and if I were picking this up for a Green Lantern Green Arrow team-up, it's not your standard Green Lantern, Green Arrow team up. I mean, Hal and Ollie really I don't think they share any conversations together. I think when they appear together in a panel, it's one is in the foreground doing something and one is in the background doing something. There's no real interaction. I think they should have, in all honesty, just left it as Green Lantern and the Phantom Stranger and made it a 4-part arc with Green Arrow guest appearing. But
that's just our opinion.
Yeah, that's just our opinion. I thought it was a neat story. I enjoyed it. It was certainly different for a Green Lantern story, something we normally don't get. It did remind me of the kind of story that might have been written during the Hard Traveling Heroes era.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
It had some of that vibe about it.
Sure.
So I thought it was good. It was just different. I think my favorite team up in this run was probably the Hal and Dr. Fate team up that J. Michael Straczynski wrote, because it dealt with it really played off the characters and Dr. Fate challenging Hal's perception of what fate is, and it was a good character piece.
These ain't bad. Brave and the Bold. I remember, wasn't there a cartoon, a Brave and the Bold cartoon?
Yeah. There's a Brave and the Bold, and it was a Batman cartoon.
Yeah.
Of course, right?
Though I will say Clark is into Bat Wheels, which, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of funny. I mean, I don't want to talk about that all podcast, but that's the only nice thing I'll say is it's fun to watch.
But I thought it was a good story. I think it reads better if you have all 4 parts. I think
it needs to be all 4 together. I mean,
yeah.
I feel the same with you. If you're reading this monthly, I mean, you're forgetting what's happening. Well, and to be fair, when you get older, it gets worse. So you start relying on the fact that, okay, well, I might just have to settle for collected trades, at the end of the day, and wait for it to be.
I get that way with certain things. I was reading the Nice House on the Lake, and there was that gap of time where there were no issues.
I know.
I had to go back
and read. I lost interest.
Yeah, I lost interest. But then I picked up a couple issues when it started back up again, and I had to go back and reread from the first issue all over again. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's that as you get older, you lose the ability to retain all that stuff. Like when I was younger and reading a 4-part story like that over 4 months, it wouldn't have been such a big thing. But I think from a reading experience, it makes more sense to have read all these together at once. It might have been a better graphic novel than a 4-issue story in a book, but
I agree. I mean, whenever you have that, I did the same thing when Venditti did Hawkman. I started reading a couple issues and I was like, man, I'm not going to be able to follow this thread every month or whatever it is that was getting released. So I remember putting it to the side and I felt bad. So I was like, he's I like him. He's one of my favorites, Venditti. And I was like, I'll just wait till it comes out in trades. When I got all the trades, I read them. I just read them one after another, and probably within a day or two. And they were excellent. And it's such a fulfillment because then you're getting the bulk of the story, everything, not the fractured pieces and having to flip back and remember what happened. But
this was good. And like you said, the artwork, Doug Braithwaite's artwork, I thought was really, really solid in this.
Yeah, he did real good. A lot of his colors and his shadings done really well.
Yeah. And like I said, sometimes the painted style, like this is, sometimes it comes off really good, sometimes not so much. But this I thought was really good. But like I said, if you didn't listen to the Lanterncast, you owe it to yourselves to listen to that to talk about the first part of the story, because they certainly went in more in depth than we did here. And I know it was hard for them to talk about a story that they can't talk about the ending of. So that was a challenge for them to do that. But I thought they did a great job. So
let's pass the mic off to Myron and Phil.
and actually, we're having conversations with the Lanterncast of doing our own Green Lantern event in June. So we'll see. We may be starting up something new that's just Green Lantern podcast, because there's more than just ours in the Lanterncast, and bringing a couple of others into it. And we haven't come up with a name, but I'm going to lobby for GL June.
I like that.
Sounds a lot like G.I. Joe, and I know you love G.I. Joe, so
I do. I really do.
All right. Well, we've got some listener feedback. This will be the first time we're trying it in the video format, so we'll see how badly I mess it up. But we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will do some listener feedback.
Our first message is from Midnight Q, who is a new listener. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
I'm a newish listener. I've caught a couple of shows now, but I'm currently reading the GL Omnibus and backlog of books cause I couldn't read comics regularly as a kid. So my knowledge is hodgepodge at best. I really enjoy hearing some good comic book talk and getting the word on good books that were and are coming out. I love these interviews. Your show is great. Keep up the good work.
Midnight
Sorry.
Q. That's cool. I like that. Oh, so you're a newish listener. I like that even more. So that hope we can turn you into a long time listener down the road. So the GL Omnibus is a good place to just go. I mean, it's heaven. I mean, it's like if there's a place to sit and read where you can just zone out all life as we know it, the GL Omnibus is the place to go. And I think Myron would
Oh yeah.
agree.
First of all, Midnight Q, welcome to the show and listening to the show. I'm not sure how long you've been listening, but I hope that what we do enhances your fan experience. That's what we're trying to accomplish with this show. Is basically trying to add something to what people are getting out of it. So that's great. And thank you for your appreciation of the interviews we've done. It's funny to think back about how many interviews we've done. We have done a lot of interviews, so I'm really happy about that, and I hope we get some more. We're still working on one that would be a dream interview, and I don't know if we're ever going to get it. It seems like things keep popping up, but we'll see what happens. But thank you so much, and welcome to the podcast of Oa Family. We hope you stick around, and we hope we don't ever disappoint anybody. Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and give us another one?
Our second message is from Ben Chan, who has a comment about episode 222. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1.
Great interview. I'm totally psyched for this new series. Also, I hadn't heard the term OODA loop, but it's what Malcolm Gladwell wrote about in Blink, which he described as rapid cognition. It's a gut instinct, even though it does happen in the brain, that's been honed through those 10,000 hours of practice and training, and I agree that it's exactly how HAL should be presented.
Hey, Ben, thanks for reaching out. Appreciate it. Yeah, the whole OODA loop thing, and you're exactly right. It does tie to the whole rapid cognition, and it's probably the easier thing to say than the OODA loop. OODA loop sounds like a breakfast cereal.
It actually sounds like a Green Lantern name, a Green Lantern Corps member. And OODA loop from sector whatever.
But yeah, I've always looked at that as it makes so much sense for HAL to have this rapid cognition, and that all these hours of training and so on, it leads to your brain functioning at a higher capacity. And so it makes perfect sense because it explains the air quote impulsiveness of the character. When you take HAL's devil may care attitude, knowing that this is the kind of guy that jumps out of an airplane knowing he's going to figure out a way out of this on the way down. You couple that with somebody who has rapid cognition and the confidence to know he can get out of it, and you get HAL. It just perfectly makes sense. It's much more sense than HAL is a cocky, arrogant person who just flies in without a plan.
Right.
So
right, and mischaracterization always happens, and I think that's overlooked, and I think, but I think it's important if you're gonna get a character right, you stay true to the form. You don't need to change things just because, and I think that happens, and I think it happens more freely than what people should do when it comes to characterizations. Some things just can be left alone, and some things, shouldn't be touched.
yeah. Well, I think sometimes it's people don't have a grasp of the character, or they haven't read enough of the character, so they write based on what they think they know about the character because they haven't done the research.
And a topical approach isn't a good take to have when you're first reading somebody.
Yeah.
You got to give it a while. I mean, like you and I talk about how like he's a best friend, like he just had him over for dinner with the family the other night. But at the same time, a first time reader gets on, they don't know anything about the character, so that's where you got to make sure it's important, because
Right.
that's your reader. You need to attract them with a certain characterization, and that's a fine line with, I'm sure, with that writers probably deal with whenever they do write their books.
Well, heck, I thought John's got it wrong too when they did the whole New 52 and we saw Hal back in the very beginning of his career. I thought he was portrayed awfully in that whole thing.
Mhm.
So it's an easy trap to fall into.
Right.
But I am like you, very excited for this new series. I think Jeremy Adams has a good grasp on the character, and I can't wait to talk about that first issue on the show, which is going to be our next episode. I'm excited to talk about it. I am enthusiastic, more enthusiastic for the franchise than I have been in quite a while.
And it is kind of like refreshing to have that upbeat, right? I mean, when you and I talk, I mean, I'm sure there's levels where we've talked at where we feel like deflated or defeated or down in the dumps or just getting beat up with Batman stuff all the time, day in and day out. But at the same time, we're still upbeat about it. And it is the ebb and flow of comics, people. I mean, you can't ever be at a high point of something for so very long where it's going to stay that way for as long as you want it to. Eventually, sometimes it's going to plummet, So, I mean, and comic books work that way, Unfortunately, the barometer doesn't seem to work with Batman because he just gets more popular and more popular all the time, and more stuff gets rid.
Seems to be immune to that whole process, but it's like you can't appreciate the highs until you experience the lows.
And that's a good point. That's the best point you can make about it, right?
And there's been times where Green Lantern has been, very at a very apex piece. I mean, I was certainly crescendoed with the Johns run, but there were eras before that when there were a number of Green Lantern books, and it was very popular to be using those characters, and it ebbed and flowed. It's very much a wave, and I hope that we've bottomed out and we're back on the way up again.
If it's any consolation, the last run before Adam started this, I think that was a bottoming out process.
I think that was the lowest bottom out I think I've ever seen for the Green Lantern characters. In all honesty, I don't think it could have gotten much worse. It probably could have, but
to each their own, though.
That's right. There are people that liked it, and God bless you.
We're moving on.
We're moving on. We're chugging along. We're going to the next one. Power Ring, give us the next piece of listener feedback.
Our last message is also about episode 222. It's from Humgruffin. Playing in 3, 2, 1.
After reading GL number 1, I was really invested in John spending time with his family. The second half in space was a bit jarring. I think I would prefer a John Stewart series about him building his shed and spending time with his mom.
Hey, Humgruffin, thanks so much for reaching out. Appreciate it. I kind of agree with you a little bit. I think Philip Kennedy Johnson was struggling with the fact that I only have so many pages. I need to let the reader know where John is, but at the same time, I need to advance the plot because this is all leading into this new series that's coming up. So, I think out of that 8 pages or so that he got, I think he only spent 2 with John, and people that were tuning in for the John Stewart story only got 2 pages of John. And then we get a bunch of exposition and build up. I think that's going to change. I think that was just for the first issue. I think the balance, these 2 stories are going to collide really soon, I think. So, but I totally get it. Because I think one of the problems I have with John's character is how DC has not built up a supporting cast for him that's with any regularity. He doesn't have a rogues gallery of his own, really. That if we're going to put John out there as a leading Green Lantern, he's got to be able to stand on his own. And right now, I think we've mentioned it before on the show, Phil, that John has been a supporting character in Green Lantern and not a lead. Mm. And when they've tried to do a lead, and there was times in the past when John was the Green Lantern leading the franchise, it was short-lived. And there were, for a while, John Stewart worked at Ferris Aircraft as an architect. Everything was attached to the hip, and John hasn't had his own thing. And as much as you and I did not like the previous run, one of the plans that writer had was to take John, right or wrong, was to take John away from being a Green Lantern and make him his own thing, because in his mind, and he has said this publicly in forums and whatnot, in his mind, John will never be the Green Lantern as long as Hal's around, and Hal is too profitable for DC to get rid of. They learned that lesson already. So from his perspective, the best thing to do is to take the rest of the Lanterns and give them some other role so they can be their own thing. And that's kind of what you saw him starting to do at the end of his first run, only run, thankfully. But at the end of his first run, that's part of what he was trying to set up. And I totally get it. You know, I sometimes feel like John's best run as a character was when he was with the Dark Stars.
Yeah, that he was cool with them. And that was, and Mosaic was cool, but I mean that was a long time ago.
Yeah,
You know, it's so long ago. It doesn't even register now.
right. But even Mosaic had the Guardians and Hal showing up periodically, and
Sure.
so on. So he wasn't on his own. I mean, you had some Green Lanterns that joined him in the Dark Stars, but it was still very much John Stewart front and center. And
Good point. Yeah.
you know, if John is going to stand on his own, if they want to make him a stand-up character, he's always going to be in Hal's shadow. That's reality.
I think I read on, and I think might have been on Reddit or it was a Twitter. It was somebody asked the question, "Who was John Stewart's rogues gallery?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was like, "Does he even have one?" I mean,
right.
I mean, I think one of them on there said fatality, which I wouldn't count that as a rogue. I mean, they were a love item at one time too. So. But there was other ones on their name that I really none of them stood out to me to where I was like, yeah, he doesn't really have a rogues kind of a gallery of. I mean, if you count Sinestro, that's by proxy, right? Because he's Green Lantern Corps proxy. So, and much of the same effect. So was the rest of the other corps that he's battled with. Atrocitus, you know, those are all, and not specifically attached to John Stewart in any way. And I think a good point that a writer could make would be to pull somebody out of John Stewart's past that has a personal attachment to him as a character. And I think you could draw out a lot more with that.
Right. I think, like, I don't want to say rogues gallery, but like think of like an arch villain, someone who's got a very personal connection to the hero, and their dynamic is very much based on that. You know, like Batman and the Joker, Superman and General Zod, you know, Wonder Woman and the Cheetah,
right.
Flash and Reverse Flash, Hal and Sinestro. They have that dynamic, and unfortunately, I don't think. I mean, you had, what was the character that Kyle had? Effigy? Am I remembering it right? Was Effigy his name? I don't remember.
Sure.
But he, you know, they built some new characters to be his arch rivals, and John just hasn't had that really. So, you know, I understand where, if DC really is going to invest in the John Stewart character, there's some legwork they need to do to build this character up.
I'd have to argue that Kyle's biggest opponent was probably the Icebox.
Oh, that was cold.
It was. Oh, that was even colder. Anyway.
All right.
Yeah, but have faith. I think they're going to do a lot more with Kennedy's going to do a lot more with John Stewart. I mean, he has plans, and when we talk to him, you could tell he has some passion going into it, and I think he's really looking forward to it. And the dude is super, super busy writing what he's writing. I mean, geez, he's writing 007. He's doing Hulk. You know, he's doing Action Comics, because I've been reading that, and that they brought back Cyborg's back, man. It's good to see him again. But I think Philip Kennedy Johnson is really going to invest a lot of time and effort into giving John Stewart fans what they want.
Yeah, and it was interesting. One of the things, and I don't think we elaborated enough, and I probably should have, is he did mention that this was originally going to be a mini series when it comes out, but that it sounded like they were trying to schedule him from beyond that, and he was basically saying, well, I've got too much other stuff to do. If this book goes beyond the initial period, I won't be the one writing it. So is it going to be a limited series? Is it going to be an ongoing series? He implied that DC kind of wants it to be an ongoing series, but that he couldn't commit to it.
At the same time, he could pass off the baton to Adams, and they could just tie in John Stewart with
He could
that
write.
book.
He could write 2 books.
Yeah.
Certainly could. Certainly
I
could.
mean, that could potentially be a possibility of what a writer's plan could be. And those guys working together closely with and being on this book together, I mean, that would make sense moving forward, because then you're familiarized yourself with each other and what your plans are. So, and you both know what each other wants to do in
Yeah.
case Kennedy Johnson wants to pass it off.
Right.
So
Right.
who
We'll
knows
see.
with these guys? I mean, they always change, right? And DC is notorious for, lack of a better words, not knowing what the heck it wants to do sometimes, you know. I mean, I'm not looking for like their plans like a year or so out. I just, I'd like to invest my heart into something that I know is going to be around for a lot longer than 6 months or 3 months.
Right. Right.
Anyway,
All right. Well, as always, we appreciate listeners and viewers, if you're watching us on YouTube, reaching out to us and giving us some feedback. Greatly appreciate it. We're going to take a quick pause and come back and wrap up the episode. So, Power Ring, why don't you tell people how they can participate in the show as well?
You can become a part of the show by leaving a message up to 1 minute long on our voicemail line. Call us at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can also email us at podcast@blogofoa.com. We'd love to hear from you.
all right, fellow Owens, welcome back. Another cool podcast in the directory. And I will say we've been very, very busy lately, and it's fun because it's like the end of the school year for me. I'm getting ready to be off for 2 months. And these last few weeks with us piling on these podcasts, we got to record again, and we're going to be recording again right after that.
Yeah. Oh, it's been a good time to be busy. We both had some things going on outside of all of this that has been we needed to have some fun.
Yeah.
So
this was a delight.
But
in light of some darkest moments, but that's okay.
You're very right. But I'm enjoying doing it in this new video format. We've gotten some good comments, and I didn't pull all the comments off of YouTube, but overwhelmingly, it seems like people really like it. We've got some work to do on our side to make it more video friendly. I just got a new camera. Hopefully people notice the difference in the quality of the picture on my end. And what makes it different, and it is a little more labor intensive for me, is the editing process, because editing the audio is a little easier because I can just put things that I have to do with the video component. And
Sure.
if you and I are talking and one of us overtalks the other, I would edit those things out. Or if I get one of my coughing issues from my birth defect, I would edit my own coughing out, and I really can't do that here as easily. So there's a little more work to do there. If I feel compelled to want to add some video components in, like if we're talking about a particular book or the news and we're going to talk about an action figure, I feel compelled to, for the YouTube piece, to put a picture of the figure up. So there's more work to do on the editing side. And certainly when it comes to listener feedback, the behind the scenes stuff that happens is I use a text to voice engine to create the voices of the Power Ring and the listener feedback. And then the Power Ring piece, I have to run through some filters to make it sound like a Power Ring instead of just a female voice. So I have to take those pieces, edit them together, make an MP3, and then make a video out of it with the text overlay for video. So there is more work on my side. And I know, just like when I started editing, when Bill and I were doing the podcast, Bill used to do all the editing and I would do the publishing. And when he left, I had to learn how to do the editing. And so there was a learning curve there. And just like this, there's a learning curve. So I hope that people are patient with us, realizing that this is not our full-time job. We're not paid to do this. We're just doing it because we love it. And so we may not look as shiny and polished as other web shows you might watch, but we hope that we'll get there. And I'm going to try one thing with this particular episode, where I'm going to try wrapping us with a banner, so it isn't just a dark screen around our two frames. I'm going to try to put some graphics around it and play with that. And so I'll be doing things that'll be evolving as we go. So as you guys are seeing this evolve and change and grow, I hope that you bear with us and stick with us, even though we may not look as like the flashiest thing out there, and that you'll give us some feedback, both positive and negative, and constructive feedback that will help us make the show better. Because I really do like doing it in the video format. I always felt funny publishing an audio podcast to YouTube because like I wouldn't put a video on to listen to it. I would just download the podcast or use a different platform.
Right.
So I kind of always wanted to do something different. And I had some grandiose plans that just never really worked out. And this, I think, will work out well. I enjoy doing a video and being able to see you. We did Skype before, but we usually didn't do video with it. And so I enjoy this because it allows me to have facial contact. And I think our conversations are even more organic than usual because we can see each other.
And it's fun. But I will say, I think our budget for our CGI is probably the same as Joss Whedon's Justice League at this point, right? So, I mean, if you're looking for high quality special effects, you might need to, go watch The Flash when it comes out, or the Transformers.
I got to figure out how to make the power ring blink when we get ready to do listener feedback.
Right. I wish we could do something with like some green with our eyes or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the worst problem I have is because of my glasses, my monitor hits, and I'm trying not to make the reflection show up. So I'm consciously moving my head at different angles, trying to eliminate the glare, but yet still try to make eye contact, which is a challenge.
Well, and see, like my image is kind of blah, and at the same time, do I care? I do. I'm here to have a good time, and I want to try to look better, but I'm not here to look good for people. So, so I'm here to have a good time with my friend Myron and reach some people out there. And I might clean up this image out here. I got my gravitas back there. It's just a mess because I'm looking for a new home and I haven't got all my collection displayed yet, and I'm sad about it. So whenever we do this podcast, that's going to be another transitional change too.
I bought a new camera. I think it makes the picture better, but it doesn't make me look any better. I'm still me.
Yeah.
But anyway, next time we will be talking about Green Lantern #1, and we'll be doing that before Green Lantern #2 comes out. So we're hoping to talk about Green Lantern 1 and Green Lantern 2 in June, as well as the June event. So we'll be doing 3 episodes in June, I hope.
That's good. I like that. I'm okay with that. I'll be off till August, so I'm fine.
This is the third time now you've brought this up.
That's because I'm excited.
Now you're just bragging.
I mean, I do. I send it to all my friends all the time. Hey, I got one more day of work left, and I usually get the finger. Hey, but tomorrow's my last day until August, and then I won't hear anything. Hours will go by. Why didn't you text me? You think I'm going to respond to that crap?
Ring finger.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, my friends. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of the podcast of OA. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more. Until then, take care of each other. Keep that power ring charged and make every day your brightest day. Take care. Thanks so much for watching this Green Lantern video from the blog of OA. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find even more great Green Lantern videos, reviews, podcasts, and more at our main website, www.blogofoa.com. So until next time, keep your power ring charged and make every day your brightest day.